Hi, I'm Lynne Kiesling, co-director of the Institute for Regulatory Law and Economics, and I'm happy today to be having a conversation with Ray Gifford, who's a partner at Wilkinson Barker Knauer LLP and one of the co-founders of the IRLE way back in the dark ages in 2004.
Ancient history.
And we are here today to today's October 14th, 2020, and we are here to discuss some of the potential implications, especially at the state regulatory level, of a couple of recent FERC rulings. One being the FERC Order 2222 having to do with DER aggregation, and the other being a recent FERC decision, the Broadview decision in Montana regarding its status as a QF under PURPA. So let's start with the FERC 2222, and I think the kind of high level overview is that after a couple of years of technical conferences and decisions and building on the precedent that they had established in 2018 with Order 841, enabling energy storage to participate more easily in wholesale power markets, FERC 2222 opens the door for more aggregation of distributed energy resources. And they are very particular in this about defining what constitutes a DER, that it's basically smaller, smaller resources, including those behind the customer meter. And they have a lot of justification for this decision that I think really maps into the IRLE 5 prisms way that we tend to analyze and think about regulation. So I think the idea is that the FERC is directing the RTOs and ISOs that operate wholesale power markets to create basically an official identity for DER aggregators to be able to participate in the organized, what they're calling the RTO ISO markets. And that what I found really interesting, and this comes in with the kind of innovation and dynamism Schumpeterian prism that we use, was that they basically sounded like they were saying that as technology has evolved, the way DER technologies and digitization have evolved, that they now have created opportunities for these resources to be able to provide ancillary services and energy and other benefits that are currently restricted in wholesale power markets, and that therefore the rate structure and the prices coming out of wholesale power markets had become unjust and unreasonable. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and it's a big move by FERC across a line that it had always been loath to cross into, reaching down, if you will, into the distribution system to say what is to some extent axiomatic, that what happens with DERs does have an effect on wholesale power markets and wholesale power prices. The problem with it is it's a bit of a truism, and it almost proves too much. And that's where I think the question lies as a legal one, which is, where does that federal state divide, which had historically been fairly easy to see and had been fairly broadly observed, is now eroding. And maybe it's eroding for just what you said, Lynn, for Schumpeterian technological change reasons. It also means that there's a degree to which federal jurisdiction is swallowing traditional state prerogatives, and you're heading toward a Wickard v. Filborn type federalism situation, where when I flip my light switch at home, that is axiomatically going to have some effect on wholesale power markets and the equilibrium that emerges in them, and therefore does FERC get to regulate that, and that's where I think the fight is, and the final interesting point, and I'll shut up, is the same folks who are very happy and cheering along this DER decision and FERC allowing them to participate in wholesale markets. The role is reversed when you look at the net metering petition, the New England Ratepayer Association petition, where they're asking FERC to regulate net metering rates. And it's very tough to distinguish one from the other if you're talking about what affects wholesale markets.
So that's an interesting comparison. Do you see FERC coming up with kind of consistent rulings across those two cases, or not?
I doubt it. I think the sides are going to be switched. The folks, because in some sense, rooftop solar is just another distributed resource. And what the petitioners in the New England ratepayers, or at least the forces behind that petition, are trying to solve a political economy problem, to bring in the fourth public choice prism, which is if and when net metering rates get embedded at an artificially high avoided cost number, as they have in certain states, there is a intensely interested constituency who loves to benefit from those high net metering rates. And what FERC is being asked to do, in some sense, in exercising jurisdiction over those rooftop solar net metering rates, is to kind of crush the political stasis at the state level, where those net metering fights are nasty and intractable.
Yep, because this creates an alternative to net metering in many respects, right? DER aggregation is basically a business opportunity for the aggregator to go to DER owners and offer them some appealing, attractive service that they can then, because DER aggregation, to me, the business model is essentially risk management and wholesale market arbitrage combined.
Yeah, maybe more the latter than the former, depending on where you're talking about. But it's certainly, FERC has crossed the Rubicon here, and it's not clear where they end. And how you feel about it institutionally probably has a lot to do with your view of the qualities and caliber of either FERC on the one hand or a given state commission on the other.
Because the ruling does go to great lengths to list the legal precedent for why this sits squarely in FERC jurisdiction and does not threaten state jurisdiction.
Yeah, as an old state regulator, I'm not sure that I agree with that. I think, you see in the very short dissent of Commissioner Danley, the more traditional view of how that jurisdiction parses itself out. But the other, cutting the opposite way and arguing against that traditional view, which I'm probably more inclined to the traditional view, is that once you embark into these wholesale market mechanisms and institutions, there is no principled stopping point. And FERC does get to swallow, ultimately, all state jurisdiction. As we know, that's what happened in telecom.
Yeah. I'd like to, I guess, I go back to as an economist, when I read the ruling and thought about it, the first thing that appealed to me or appeared to me was, number one, the innovation dynamism aspect of it, but then that the argument the commission was putting forth was very much out of our prison number 3, that what we are seeing is that innovation and dynamism has created opportunities for more participation in markets, and we need to do the institutional change to reduce transaction costs. So at least to that extent, it sounded economically legitimate.
Yeah, no, I don't think I think the economics follow from the premise pretty straightforwardly. I think the question is this equilibrium of cooperative federalism under the Federal Power Act. And, everybody knows that cooperative federal model has some tension in it and probably does have need to shift over time as technology changes. But that's not an easy it's not an easy transition, and we'll find out.
Yep. I'm going to be very interested to see how this plays out. Let's talk about the FERC decision in Montana, the Broadview qualifying facility. Solar. Yeah. So can you summarize what the case was?
Yeah. So first of all, by way of full disclosure, in the past, we have, at my law firm, represented the Montana Public Service Commission in federal court on PURPA-related matters. Not this specific thing, but I don't want to be hiding the ball there. Broadview Solar is, I think, again, the dynamism Schumpeter point probably plays prominently here. What they had asked, and what Northwestern Energy, which is the incumbent utility, were fighting over, is Broadview Solar added a 80 megawatt storage facility to its existing solar array. And it wanted to treat it as a single QF insofar as its net capacity is 80 megawatts, which is the PURPA cap. What FERC said is the addition of this battery, which your capacity was essentially double 80 because you had an 80 megawatt solar array and an 80 megawatt battery, does not constitute a single QF, but in fact is two facilities, and therefore cannot qualify as a single facility. What has happened with this ruling is that the solar industry and as well as the storage industry is going to take it to the DC Circuit because the claim is, at least, that the historic treatment of FERC is a net capacity is what constitutes your QF unit, as opposed to your aggregate capacity. So how you view it, again, getting back to a familiar theme, how you view it legally probably depends on how you view the end policy result. I read it as someone who's historically been skeptical to outright hostile to PURPA as an effort by FERC to, as they have been doing, pare back the PURPA rights. And if you know anything about the PURPA contracts in Montana and Idaho, they are very rich indeed. So the hidden fact here that's not discussed in the FERC order may well be that these egregiously out of market PURPA contracts are burdening the local ratepayers, and that's FERC's coming up with some leisure demand to tamp that down.
So I had two thoughts about that. One, the adding the battery increase the capacity factor, right? The capacity utilization of the existing solar array. And so that's the argument in favor of it just being single, is that this is just increasing its capacity factor. It's not increasing its total capacity.
Correct.
Why does it matter whether or not it's one QF facility or not? Can't they just say, you know, our storage is QF1 and our solar is QF2?
Well, I think they'd have to get back in the queue,
I see.
right? And certainly there are enough PURPA puts running around in Montana. The other thing that has happened is if you can take advantage of the older contract rate, because what the Montana Commission has done is, like many state commissions, is moved toward reforming their avoided cost. And now, particularly after the big PURPA order from last summer, you can essentially use a much more market-based rate. But if you're talking an older QF contract that may be 3, 4, 5x of the current market rate for this power, you want it grandfathered back to that rich contract.
Yep. So in both of these decisions, we see, you know, the kind of preeminence of the innovation and dynamism prism, and the kind of the tensions and the pressures of this Schumpeterian, you know, perennial gale of creative destruction. And that gets us to our kind of new reframing of our fifth prism and thinking about the innovator's dilemma, right? That these forces have both physical, technological, architectural implications, but then that loops back into the economic and obviously the institutional framework that's going to contextualize all of this is going to be very much informed by the law and the political economy of it. You said it's a summary?
Yeah, and the thing about PURPA is, I think the predominant and preeminent way to look at PURPA is through the public choice lens, right? Because it's a mandatory contract at a mandatory regulated avoided cost rate. And therefore, in PURPA, you're not getting good neoclassical market behavior.
Right.
You're getting, in essence, rent-seeking behavior by QFs and would-be QFs who can take advantage of mispriced avoided cost rates, which is, again, why you see in the PURPA susceptible states, certain states have severe PURPA problems, e.g. Idaho and Montana, and other states that have not had, that reset their avoided cost rates early on or frequently don't have these problems.
Right.
And so, PURPA's often thought to be and heralded as A, pro-environment, or B, pro-competition and pro-innovation. But to my mind, it's nothing of the sort. It's a regulatory mandated contract with an unwilling buyer and a seller who gets to sell at a mispriced rate more often than not.
At a bureaucratically determined price rather than an organic emergent price.
Yeah, no, I mean, to go back to the Montana situation that we were working for the Montana Commission in, I think the PURPA contract price, and I'm directionally right, was in the $70 a megawatt hour range is what the QF was seeking, and the Montana Commission was trying to shut down. And that same power would be $20 to $25 on the open market, or if the utility built it itself. And the reality of those QF contracts, of course, is it's not the utility that ends up having to own it; it's the ratepayer who ends up having to own it.
It'll be interesting.
And someday,
as the cost of building renewables is falling, and of course their marginal cost is pretty much zero, and to the extent that the solar is the QF, there's a mismatch there between the underlying actual costs and this utility avoided cost bureaucratic determination versus their actual avoided cost. So seems like there are a lot of balls in the air.
No, and there's a great subsequent conversation we need to have, which is, it's not an original thesis to me, which is that PURPA mispricing is what created the momentum and the political momentum and imperative for restructuring.
Mm-hmm.
And
more so than nuclear cost overruns, really?
No, because if you look at where restructuring happened, it was California, it was Pennsylvania, and it was Texas.
Yeah.
And if you overlay really bad PURPA contracts, it wasn't those three. Yeah, nuclear cost overruns.
Yeah, in Illinois, of course, the story is nuclear, but
yeah, icing on the cake. And I don't want to claim it's monocausal in this case, but if you look at the states that had really bad, we'll call them PURPA contracts and PURPA problems, that's where you got particularly your industrial load and your industrial and commercial customers saying, hey, we need to do something here. But that's a longer conversation.
Right. At some point, we will have a discussion about restructuring. So good. This is great.
I'm against it, in case you were wondering.
Well, I'm an economist, so the right answer is always, it depends.
Yes. And as our friend Eric Talley says, it depends, or it depends on the tax treatment.
Yes. Well, great. This is a good discussion. Nice to talk to you. Thanks, Ray.
Good to talk to you. All right. Take care.